Scotch whiskey demands your attention like no other spirit. It refuses to be background noise at happy hour, costs more than your car payment, and takes actual effort to appreciate. Yet millions of drinkers worldwide consider it the ultimate arrival drink for promotions, anniversaries, and moments when life finally feels like it's going your way. Today we're ranking 25 famous Scotch brands, from the ones that make you question your life choices to the liquid gold that justifies mortgage-level pricing. Subscribe, and let's pour into the truth about Scotch whiskey and why it's really worth your paycheck. James Buchanan had the audacity in 1884 to create a blend so smooth it wouldn't offend delicate English palates tired of heavily peated whiskeys. He succeeded spectacularly. Within a year, he was supplying the British Parliament, and Queen Victoria awarded him a royal warrant by 1898. This blend dominates Latin America as the fastest-growing Scotch in the Americas, yet you literally cannot find it in Scotland itself. That geographical irony tells you everything. Buchanan's was designed for accessibility, not complexity, appealing to drinkers who want the prestige of Scotch without any of the challenging flavors that make Scotch interesting. The 12-year delivers velvety texture, honey notes, and gentle spice that goes down easier than bad decisions. That approachability makes it instantly forgettable to anyone who's developed an actual palate. Whiskey for people who fundamentally don't want to think about what they're drinking. Diageo created the singleton by producing it at 3 different Scottish distilleries: Dufftown for Europe, Glenord for Asia, Glendronach for the Americas, each with slightly different characteristics, but sharing the same beginner-friendly identity. This was engineered through longer fermentation and gentle distillation that creates clean, fruity spirits, using unpeated malt and a combination of European oak ex-sherry casks with American oak ex-bourbon casks, but the result lacks any memorable character. Experienced drinkers recognize it as training wheels of whiskey, useful for learning, utterly boring once you know how to ride. The singleton exists so you can say you drink single malt without actually committing to what makes single malts worth drinking. John Dewar opened his Perth shop in 1846, and his sons transformed it into a global empire through marketing genius, hiring bagpipers to drown out competitors and running the first ever cinema advertisement in 1898. They pioneered double aging, blending whiskey, then aging it again before bottling, a technique now standard across the industry. The modern Dewar's 12-year coasts on this prestigious history rather than its liquid contents. That double aging process should add complexity, but the current blend feels watered down with vanilla and honey on the nose, giving way to mostly grain alcohol, with barely a whisper of malt. This is Scotch for airport duty-free shoppers who recognize the name from their grandfather's liquor cabinet. Dewar's built the Aberlour distillery in 1896 specifically to secure core malt for their blends. But somewhere between then and now, they forgot that tradition requires maintenance, not just marketing. Chivas brothers launched their 25-year blend in 1909, then introduced the 12-year after Prohibition ended in 1938. The heart of every Chivas blend is Strathlisla, Scotland's oldest continuously operating Highland distillery from 1786, bought for just £71,000 at auction in 1950 after its previous owner landed in jail for tax evasion. This blend looks like success with its gleaming gold label and substantial bottle weight. But behind that refined exterior sits whiskey playing everything too safe, delivering honey and apples so predictable they could appear on a corporate PowerPoint about accessible luxury. It's the whiskey equivalent of business casual, well-pressed, well-behaved, and utterly unadventurous. George Smith committed an act of extraordinary courage in 1824 by becoming Scotland's first legal distiller after the Excise Act of 1823. His fellow illicit distillers in the Glenlivet Valley were so enraged that Smith carried 2 pistols for protection, while over 200 illegal stills operated around him, all making whiskey so renowned that King George IV specifically requested it during his 1822 Edinburgh visit. This 12-year became America's top-selling single malt, and a rite of passage for millions discovering what Speyside actually means. The whiskey opens with pear, apple, and vanilla, followed by gentle spice, a soft introduction to the Highlands that welcomes rather than overwhelms. The Glenlivet uses 6 million bottles annually from 15 copper pot stills to maintain consistency that makes it reliably good rather than occasionally great. It earned its position by being the training ground where millions learned whether they actually like Scotch. William Matheson converted the Morangie brewery into a distillery in 1843 at a site that had produced alcohol since 1703. What makes Glenmorangie unique is Scotland's tallest stills at 16 feet 10 inches. Height matters because taller stills mean more reflux, producing lighter, more delicate spirits. They only use each oak barrel twice before retiring it, ensuring maximum oak influence while maintaining that signature lightness. They even own forests in America's Ozark Mountains specifically to source oak barrels. This 10-year delivers vanilla, peach, and citrus, the perfect introduction for friends who claim they don't like Scotch. But that accessibility creates a ceiling. Glenmorangie Original proves that being an excellent gateway doesn't automatically make you an excellent destination, just an excellent introduction to what comes next. John Walker started blending whiskeys in his Kilmarnock grocery store in 1820, but his son Alexander and grandson Alexander II transformed it into empire. They created extra special Old Highland in 1909, later renamed Black Label to match its distinctive color, while the iconic Striding Man logo came from cartoonist Tom Brown that same year. This 12-year blends 40 different whiskeys with Caol, providing the smoky backbone that makes Black Label distinctive. For many Americans, this was their first introduction to what smoky actually means beyond campfires and barbecue. The blend delivers caramel, oak, gentle smoke, dark chocolate, and that signature warmth that built a near-religious following. What makes it special isn't innovation, it's precision so consistent that every bottle tastes identical, whether purchased in Tokyo or Texas. That reliability has made it the default Scotch for bars worldwide. William Grant spent 20 years dreaming of building his own distillery before laying foundation stones in 1886 with his 7 sons and 2 daughters. They bought second-hand Cardhu equipment for just £100, and on Christmas Day 1887, the first spirit dropped from their stills. They became the first distillery to actively market single malt in 1963, essentially creating the modern category that now defines premium Scotch. This 12-year offers crisp green apple, fresh pear, honey, and soft vanilla that critics call too safe. While completely missing that consistency is exactly why it became the world's best-selling single malt. Glenfiddich remains entirely family-owned through 5 generations, now appealing to everyone from wedding guests to people just wanting a reliable Tuesday night drink. Glenfiddich proves that creating the world's most awarded single malt doesn't require reinvention. Sometimes it just requires never screwing up what already works. The Harvey brothers built Bruichladdich in 1881 on Loch Indal shore as state-of-the-art for its time. After multiple closures, Mark Renier and Jim McEwen rescued it in 2000 with a radical philosophy: no peat, no chill filtration, no added coloring, and continued use of the original 1881 Harvey machinery. This breaks every rule of Islay whiskey. While neighbors produce heavily peated smoke bombs, the classic Laddie is 100% unpeated, delivering floral complexity and distinctly maritime character. Atlantic storms, salt-soaked air, fresh barley, proving the island offers more than just peat. Some traditionalists find it too gentle for Islay. Others consider it revolutionary. Bruichladdich demonstrates that rebellion works when you're actually good at what you're rebelling against. Magnus Jonsson was a butcher and church officer by day, illicit distiller and whiskey smuggler by night. Legend says he hid whiskey under the church pulpit until revenuers caught him in 1798 and forced him to buy a license, founding Scotland's northernmost distillery. This 12-year launched in 1979, offering unique character, heather honey, gentle peat smoke, and maritime influence from Orkney's Viking-influenced terroir. The distillery malts 20% of its own barley using local heather-rich peat, creating distinctly different smoke profiles than Islay whiskies. Highland Park bridges delicate Speyside malts with powerful island whiskies, appealing to drinkers who want both worlds in the same bottle. Founded in 1881 in one of Islay's most remote locations, Bunnahabhain remained accessible only by boat until 1960. Unlike smoky neighbors, they switched to unpeated malt decades ago when blenders demanded lighter whiskeys, a decision that now makes them stand out when everyone else is competing on peat levels. This 12-year is unpeated, but undeniably maritime, briny, nutty, with beautiful sherry influence from cask maturation. The distillery uses Islay's tallest stills, creating lighter, more delicate spirits than neighbors achieve while maintaining 46.3% ABV and avoiding chill filtration for full, oily mouthfeel. It's proof that Islay terroir extends beyond peat bogs into something more nuanced. Hector Henderson founded Caol in 1846, overlooking the strait between Islay and Jura. In 1972, Diageo dramatically rebuilt the distillery, expanding from 2 stills to 6. Today it's Islay's largest producer at over 3 million liters annually, earning the Whiskey Factory nickname. This 12-year combines fresh pear, grassiness, juniper, and gentle smoke more restrained than Lagavulin or Laphroaig. Much of its output goes into Johnnie Walker Black, meaning the single malt often flies under radar despite offering medicinal peat balanced with honey and citrus. Since 1999, Caol has also produced unpeated Highland-style whiskey during part of each year, demonstrating flexibility that smaller operations can't match. Caol proves that being a factory doesn't mean being faceless when you're making whiskey this refined at this scale. Founded in 1826, Glendronach burned in 1837 and cycled through owners before closing entirely from 1996 to 2001. Billy Walker's Benriach Group purchased it in 2008 and made it 100% sherry cask matured using Pedro Ximénez and Oloroso casks from Spanish bodegas. The transformation was dramatic. Pre-2009, Glendronach was forgettable. Post-2009 became a cult favorite among sherry enthusiasts. This 12-year delivers dried fruits, chocolate praline, caramel, and warming spice in velvety packages. Due to the production gap, bottles sold between 2009 and 2017 contained whiskey much older than stated ages. An accidental gift to early adopters that some enthusiasts claim tastes better than newer production. Tobermory Distillery on the Isle of Mull was founded in 1798 and produces 2 completely different whiskies, unpeated Tobermory and heavily peated Ledaig, using the same stills by simply switching between peated and unpeated barley. This 10-year has become a cult value pick among peat lovers, using Port Ellen malt from Islay but producing distinctly different smoke character, more smoked ham than bonfire. At 46.3% ABV, non-chill filtered, it delivers medicinal peat, wood smoke, and pepper with surprising vanilla sweetness underneath. The price-to-quality ratio makes it a sleeper hit among enthusiasts who've moved beyond name recognition. William Grant launched Monkey Shoulder in 2005, answering a question nobody asked: What if Scotch could be fun? The name honors the repetitive strain injury maltmen developed from turning barley by hand. The blend combines malts from Glenfiddich, Balvenie, and Kinninvie, arguably the finest pedigree of any blended malt in history. This was designed as gateway drug for cocktails delivering vanilla, toffee, subtle spice, and ridiculous smoothness. The branding with 3 monkeys on the bottle's shoulder appeals to younger drinkers, put off by Scotch's stuffy reputation and $100 plus price tags. Before Monkey Shoulder, blended malts barely existed as a category. It essentially created the market by making Scotch accessible to people who thought they didn't like Scotch. John Smith, who previously managed both Macallan and Glenlivet, founded Cragganmore in 1869, choosing the site for mineral-rich Cragganburn water and Strathspey railway proximity. He used flat-topped spirit stills that supposedly produce sweeter, more complex spirits than elongated necks. This 12-year represents Speyside in Diageo's Classic Malt series launched in 1988, delivering honeyed malt, dried fruit, delicate smoke, and creamy mouthfeel. Most production disappears into Johnnie Walker Black and White Horse blends, making the single malt bottling feel like privileged access to hidden treasure. This appeals to enthusiasts who've moved beyond obvious choices into territory where research gets rewarded with quality that name recognition alone can't deliver. Brothers John and Hugh Stevenson built their distillery in 1794 before the town of Oban even existed. The town literally grew around the whiskey, and today the distillery sits hemmed in by buildings with no room to expand, operating with just 2 pot stills that make it one of Scotland's smallest. This 14-year launched as part of Classic Malts in 1989, walking a perfect tightrope between Highland sweetness and island smoke. Notes of sea salt, honey, dried fruit, and gentle peat create what critics call West Highland character bridging 2 worlds. None of Oban's output goes to blends. Every drop gets bottled as single malt, making it appeal to drinkers who want both Highland and island characteristics without committing fully to either extreme. Founded in 1815 on Islay's southern coast, Ardbeg endured 2 closures that nearly killed the brand before Glenmorangie rescued it in 1997. They built anticipation until the 10-year from fully post-revival stock cemented the distillery's cult status. This is among the world's peatiest whiskeys, medicinal, briny, with intense phenolic smoke hitting immediately. But beneath peat lies surprising balance: vanilla, lemon zest, toffee crafted by Dr. Bill Lumsden into whiskey showcasing Islay character without becoming caricature. The current flood of limited releases draws criticism, but the 10-year remains untouched proof that some classics shouldn't be messed with. Hugh and Kenneth McCaskill founded Talisker in 1830 after forcibly evicting tenant farmers. The distillery survived fires, fraud that landed one owner in jail for selling non-existent whiskey in 1880, and multiple ownership changes before joining Classic Malts in 1988. Robert Louis Stevenson ranked Talisker among Scotland's finest, and his assessment holds. This 10-year delivers sea salt, peat smoke, and cracked black pepper, followed by malt sweetness and warm, lingering finish that tastes like Scotland's rugged west coast. Lightly peated at 18 to 22 parts per million, it lets maritime character shine through. Until 2017, it was the only distillery on the Isle of Skye, appealing to drinkers who want bold, complex whiskey that doesn't apologize for its intensity. Talisker proves that some whiskeys don't care whether you like them or not. Those who do, never forget them. Alexander Reid founded Macallan in 1824 as a farm distillery whose name derives from Gaelic meaning fertile ground. Originally, they aged exclusively in Spanish sherry casks, but the double cask launched in 2016, marrying American oak and European oak sherry casks. This delivers raisins, figs, hazelnuts, candied orange peel, and leather on the nose. Vanilla, ginger, dark chocolate on the palate. It's the go-to Scotch for celebrations, promotions, anniversaries. I made it moments when you want whiskey that signals success. Yes, you're paying for the name, but when the name consistently delivers this quality, maybe that's not entirely unreasonable. Founded in 1815, Laphroaig survived tragedy when an early owner died falling into a vat of partially made whiskey. During American Prohibition, it was legally sold as medicine due to intense medicinal character. The only Scotch holding that distinction, while distillery peat bogs get traditionally cut, dried for 3 months, and burned. If the macallan is refined orchestra, Laphroaig 10-year is pure rock and roll. Intense peat, medicinal iodine, seaweed, and hints of vanilla create bold, polarizing whiskey that's absolutely unforgettable. Marketing embraces this. You'll either love it or hate it. For those learning whether they like peated whiskey, this is the definitive test. The village of Aberlour saw its first distillery in 1825, but it lasted less than a decade before James Fleming rebuilt in 1879 using water from St. Drostan's well with supposed healing properties. The distillery burned down in 1898, was rebuilt, and now belongs to Pernod Ricard. This 12-year is double cask matured in American oak for vanilla sweetness and seasoned sherry butts for dried fruit and spice. The result? Beautiful amber color, ripe red apple on the nose, sherry-infused fruit, dark chocolate, and warming spice that's rich without being heavy. At $40 to $50, it punches well above its weight against more expensive sherried malts, appealing to drinkers who do their research rather than just buying whatever sounds impressive. David Stewart joined William Grant & Sons as a whiskey stocks clerk in 1962 and became the industry's longest-serving malt master. In 1982, he experimented with something unprecedented, maturing whiskey in bourbon casks, then transferring to sherry casks for additional aging he called double wood. The technique, now called finishing, revolutionized Scotch production. The balvenie double wood launched in 1993 as direct descendant of Stewart's original experiment, delivering vanilla from bourbon cask and dried fruits with honey from sherry in a warm, enduring finish. This is perfectly balanced, complex yet approachable whiskey that appeals to both beginners and enthusiasts. The balvenie proves that revolution doesn't require abandoning tradition when you understand both well enough to know where they can meet. Built in 1897 as Strathspey, the distillery was renamed Dalwhinnie, meaning Plain of Meetings, for ancient drove road crossings. At 1,073 feet elevation, it's Scotland's highest distillery, where bitter Highland winters slow maturation and create distinctive character. This 15-year is the antithesis of peated Islay power. Smooth, clean, elegant. Heather honey, pear, citrus, whisper of smoke, and remarkable complexity, despite gentle profile that earned 95 points in Jim Murray's Whiskey Bible. It represents Highlands at their most refined, bridging approachable Speyside malts with more challenging expressions. Dalwhinnie demonstrates that extremes of elevation create extremes of quality when you're patient enough to let altitude do its work. Illicit distilling at Lagavulin dates to at least 1742 before John Johnston and Archibald Campbell Brooks built 2 legal distilleries in 1816 that eventually merged. Over centuries, it survived industry booms and busts that killed lesser operations. Parks and Recreation's Ron Swanson called it the nectar of the gods. And the show's creators chose Lagavulin because co-creator Michael Schur genuinely loved it. Actor Nick Offerman has since partnered with the distillery on limited Offerman edition releases that prove pop culture can enhance rather than diminish prestige. This isn't just a drink, it's pilgrimage. Deep smoky aroma like walking into campfires after rain, powerful peat, seaweed, charred oak, and just enough sherry sweetness to balance everything into finishes that linger for what feels like minutes. It's expensive, bold, and demands your full attention. For serious Scotch drinkers, this is sacred ground that justifies every dollar spent and every moment waited for the perfect occasion to open that bottle. The Scotch world separates drinkers who want prestige from drinkers who want quality, and the best bottles deliver both without apology. Your bar cart deserves better than smooth mediocrity disguised as sophistication. Choose the Scotches that actually taste like Scotland, the ones honoring traditions through quality rather than just marketing heritage. Your palate will thank you, and your celebrations will taste like they actually matter. Hit subscribe for more truth about what's really worth your liquor budget, and drop a comment about which ranking shocked you most. Until next time, keep drinking smart.